quaint town of Winter Hollow, the Harrington family was known for their lavish Christmas dinners. This year, the sprawling Harrington mansion, perched on the edge of a dark, dense forest, was bustling with preparations. Emily Harrington, the matriarch, had invited her extended family, eager to uphold the tradition after the passing of her husband. As the guests arrived, a heavy snowfall began, blanketing the town in white. Inside, the mansion was a warm haven, adorned with festive decorations and the scent of roasting turkey and pies. The family gathered around the massive dining table, laughter and chatter filling the air. But as the night wore on, strange occurrences began to unsettle the guests. The lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows on the walls. The crackling fire in the hearth seemed to whisper in an unknown language. Despite this, the family tried to maintain a festive spirit. The turning point came when they sat down for dinner. As Emily began to carve the turkey, a thick, black liquid oozed from it instead of juices. Gasps echoed around the table, and a deep, unsettling cold swept through the room. Suddenly, the doors and windows slammed shut, plunging them into darkness. When the lights flickered back on, the once beautifully decorated room was transformed. The walls were damp and moldy, the elegant furnishings covered in cobwebs. Panic set in as the family tried to leave, only to find the doors locked and the windows unbreakable. They were trapped. Emily, in a state of shock, revealed a chilling family secret. The Harringtons were cursed, bound to an ancient entity that dwelled in the forest. Each Christmas, it demanded a tribute, a feast of souls, in exchange for the family's wealth and status. As the truth sank in, shadowy figures emerged from the walls, their eyes hollow with hunger. The family was surrounded, their screams echoing in the now haunted mansion. One by one, they were taken by the shadows, their figures becoming part of the ghostly horde. Emily, the last to be taken, realized in her final moments that her greed and pride had doomed them all. The next morning, the town of Winter Hollow woke to a clear, sunny day. The Harrington mansion stood silent, its windows dark. No trace of the family was ever found, and the mansion was eventually abandoned. Rumors spread about the cursed Christmas dinner, and the Harringtons became a ghost story, a cautionary tale of greed and the price of dealing with dark forces. And each Christmas, the townsfolk of Winter Hollow whispered of the Feast of Shadows, where the Harringtons dined for eternity in their ghostly banquet hall.
Now the second story.
In the small, snow-covered town of Eldridge, there stood an ancient manor known for its eerie past. This year, the Dean family decided to spend their Christmas at Eldridge Manor, attracted by its history and the promise of a secluded holiday. As they settled in, the manor, with its creaky floorboards and antique furnishings, seemed like a charming place to celebrate. The family decorated a grand old Christmas tree and lit a cozy fire in the hearth, laughing off the occasional cold draft or odd noise as part of the manor's charm. But as Christmas Eve approached, things began to turn sinister. The family started noticing strange occurrences, the sound of footsteps in empty corridors, whispers in the night, and the feeling of being watched. The once enchanting Christmas tree began to wilt unnaturally, its lights flickering in a disturbing pattern. On Christmas Eve, the family gathered for dinner, trying to keep their spirits high despite the growing sense of dread. As they raised their glasses for a toast, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the manor. Rushing to the source, they found the room where the children had been playing, but the children were nowhere in sight. Frantically searching the manor, they came across a hidden room, its door ajar. Inside, they found a scene from a nightmare: old, decayed Christmas decorations and a table set for a ghostly feast. In the center of the room, a decrepit Christmas tree stood, its ornaments made from bones. The air turned icy as ghostly apparitions began to materialize around them, their faces twisted in eternal torment. The spirits spoke of a cursed Christmas long ago, where a family similar to theirs was betrayed and murdered in the manor. Their souls were bound to the house, forced to relive their last Christmas forever. The teens realized they were reenacting the tragic events of that cursed night. In a desperate attempt to break the cycle, they tried to escape, but the manor wouldn't let them. Doors vanished, rooms shifted, and the ghostly family pursued them relentlessly, their wails filling the halls. In a last act of defiance, the teens managed to set the ghostly Christmas tree ablaze, hoping to end the curse. The fire spread rapidly, consuming the ghostly apparitions and the manor itself. Miraculously, the family escaped, watching in horror as Eldridge Manor burned to the ground. But their relief was short-lived. As they turned to leave, they saw the ghostly family standing in the snow, their eyes hollow and accusing. The teens left Eldridge, but they could never escape the memories of that Christmas. They were haunted by visions, and wherever they went, cold drafts and faint whispers followed. The ghostly family had bound them to the curse, making them part of the eternal Christmas haunting of Eldridge Manor.
Now the third story.
In the secluded village of Ravenswood, nestled among snow-capped mountains, an ancient tradition was observed every Christmas Eve. The villagers would gather for a grand feast at the old town hall, a tradition that had been upheld for generations. This year, the Anderson family, new to Ravenswood, were invited to partake in the festivities. The town hall was a Gothic structure, its walls adorned with old tapestries and dimly lit by flickering candles. As the Andersons entered, they were greeted by the sight of a lavish banquet spread across a long oak table. The villagers, dressed in outdated attire, welcomed them with unsettling, toothy smiles. As the feast began, the Andersons tried to blend in, despite the oddity of the event. The food was unlike anything they had ever seen: exotic meats, rich gravies, and strange, vibrant fruits. There was an intensity to the flavors that was almost overpowering. Midway through the dinner, a hush fell over the hall. The head of the village, an elderly man with piercing eyes, stood up. He announced that it was time for the sacrifice of the feast. The Andersons watched in horror as two villagers brought forth a large, covered platter and placed it at the center of the table. When the cover was lifted, a sense of dread washed over the room. On the platter was a human heart, still beating, its dark blood seeping into the white tablecloth. The villagers began chanting in an unknown language, their eyes turning black as night. The Andersons realized in terror that they were not just guests, but part of a sinister ritual. They tried to flee, but found themselves rooted to their seats, an invisible force holding them back. The head of the village approached them, his eyes now glowing with a malevolent light. He whispered that the heart was the source of the village's prosperity, a gift from the ancient spirits of the mountains. Each year, a new family was chosen to join the feast, their spirits to be consumed by the village. The Andersons, now paralyzed with fear, could only watch as the villagers descended upon them, their faces transforming into grotesque, demonic visages. As the villagers feasted, the hall transformed into a scene from a nightmare, shadows twisted into monstrous shapes, and the air filled with the screams of the damned. The Andersons felt their consciousness fading, their essence being drained by the ravenous spirits. When the feast ended, the hall returned to normal, but the Andersons were gone, vanished without a trace. The villagers cleaned up, their smiles satisfied, the ancient curse appeased for another year. In Ravenswood, the Christmas feast continued as a tradition, a night of horror hidden beneath a veneer of celebration. And each year, a new family would disappear, consumed by the feast of the forgotten.